I was having y'all, it's your boy Rico from StreetScores, and I have a few free agency updates about some things that have already happened that you should definitely know, and also some things that may happen that you may want to know and be on the lookout for as well. First of all, the Washington Commanders apparently offered left tackle Ronnie Stanley of the Ravens big money. We're going to dive into all of that background information and why we were so serious about getting the left tackle. Also, apparently the Miami Dolphins want Derrick Forest. Also, I have the official 2025 Commanders draft picks after the compensatory picks have all been assigned. Now we know exactly what picks we have, so you can go ahead and start doing your mock drafts with accurate picks. Also, I have some free agency contract updates as well, like exactly how much money certain guys that we've signed in free agency are making, their cap hits, all of that type of stuff. And I'm recording this at 2 a.m., so I'm going to give you the trivia question for March 12th. And the question is, who was the first quarterback to pass for 4,000 yards in a season for Washington? I will give you the answer at the end of this video. And before we get into everything, make sure you stick on that like button, stick on the subscription button, and stick on the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Again, one-stop shop for everything Burgundy and Gold. I'm going to have you updated on everything free agency and draft. Any little thing, rumors, reports, facts, everything. And without further ado, let's go and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. Alright, so let's start with the official Commanders draft picks. The NFL officially announced the 35 compensatory picks that will be handed out to NFL teams. Of course, the Washington Commanders, with us signing as many free agents that we did last year, we ended up with none of them. The way that the compensatory pick formula works, we technically netted positive as far as team value, which means we don't get any compensatory picks to make up for a net negative value. And so now our official picks for the 2025 NFL draft are a first round 29th overall, second round 61st overall. Those were unaffected. But then once compensatory picks start getting handed out third round and later, now our fourth round pick is officially 128th, and we got that from the Texans in that Laramie Tunsil trade. We have picked 205 overall in the 6th round and picked 245th overall in the 7th round. Those are our picks for the 2025 NFL draft. And I don't care what y'all say, man. I mean, the fact that we traded for Marshawn Lattimore, Deebo Samuel, and Laramie Tunsil and still somehow have our first and second round pick in this upcoming draft and still have our first round pick in the next draft as well, I think that's amazing general manager work right there by Adam Peters. And also, speaking of compensatory picks, so far from what we've done in free agency in 2025, compensatory picks are handed out the following year. So in 2026, as of what's happened so far, we're projected to potentially get a 6th round compensatory pick for Jeremy Chin leaving to join the Raiders. Because us losing De'Ami Brown and us gaining Javon Kinlaw just based off of the money that they're making pretty much canceled each other out in a sort of way. And then Cornelius Lucas leaving canceled out us bringing in Will Harris. So according to the projected over the cap compensatory pick formula, even though the NFL doesn't actually share their exact formula for this, but over the cap is predicting that at the very least, as of where things stand right now, we'll probably end up with a 6th round pick, an extra 6th round pick in the 2026 NFL draft. And it's unfortunate that we actually ended up having to cut Jonathan Allen instead of his contract just running out and ending, because he will not count towards our comp pick formula. But if he did, he would have been worth a 5th, maybe even a 4th round comp pick based off of the $17 million a year contract that he signed with the Vikings. He would have been a nice little comp pick, but unfortunately we cut him, and that doesn't count towards the comp pick formula. It has to be somebody that becomes an unrestricted free agent because their contract ends at the new league year. Again, we cut Jonathan Allen. That does not count. Now moving on to the next topic. There are reports from Albert Breer and other sources that the Commanders offered left tackle Ronnie Stanley, who ended up staying with the Ravens, over $24 million per year. Just to let you know, that's more than what we're even paying Laramie Tunsil right now with the contract that we just traded for. But Ravens ended up re-signing Stanley. He ended up choosing to stay with the Ravens on a 3-year, $60 million deal. which basically shows you that Ronnie Stanley preferred to take less to stay with the Ravens than to take more and leave to join, the Chiefs offered him about $20 million a year, which is about what the Ravens offered him. But both the Commanders and Patriots were both willing to offer at minimum $24 million a year. So Ronnie Stanley chose to give Baltimore a hometown discount. And again, while there were bigger offers from the Patriots and Commanders. Now, most importantly from here, that's really interesting that the Commanders wanted Ronnie Stanley that bad, which shows you that they wanted left tackle that bad. Also, just like a small note, Albert Breer did add that this number was spoken about conceptually, so to basically show that like there was no tampering, even though, how does Ronnie Stanley know before the legal tampering period that the Commanders and Patriots are offering you this much money and it's not tampering? So, you got to be careful with that type of stuff. But my main point is, shouts out to Adam Peters, because he wanted Ronnie Stanley bad, and he wasn't able to get his first choice, who was Ronnie Stanley, and somehow pivoted to an even more elite option, even though it cost us quite a bit more in draft capital, which is probably why he preferred Ronnie Stanley over Laramie Tunsil. Not only did Adam Peters somehow have a contingency plan, I strongly believe he actually ended up with the better player. I think Laramie Tunsil is easily better than Ronnie Stanley. But with as much as Adam Peters values draft picks, I can see why he preferred the free agent tackle route over trading for an offensive tackle. But that's still a very impressive backup plan and execution from Adam Peters to pivot like that. To try to get Ronnie Stanley, he prefers to take less money to stay with his current team, and then you somehow find a way to trade for a top 3 left tackle in the NFL. That's insane, Adam Peters. Again, applaud from me, man. You ain't got to worry about me. I'm loving what Adam Peters is doing so far. I was expecting more activity. I was really hoping for a Charvarius Ward. I was really hoping for maybe like a Javon Holland or a Talanoa Hufanga, or at the very least keep Jeremy Chin. I'm a little disappointed about a couple of things, but at the end of the day, Deebo Samuel and Laramie Tunsil are game-changing players. They make you way better than what you were last year already. I'm all in and doing whatever it takes to build a great team around Jaden Daniels to elevate what he can do. He's already a top 5 quarterback with the terrible receiving core he had to work with last year. Imagine what it's going to be like with Laramie Tunsil as your left tackle, and Brandon Coleman, like I've been saying since we drafted him. Before we even got to training camp, my whole thing was he can be a good left tackle. He can be an elite guard. I think he has Pro Bowl, maybe even all pro potential at guard. I think this offensive line is going to be way better than what it was last year. Nick Allegretti moving to the bench is elite depth. He is an elite backup interior offensive lineman. He's basically like our equivalent of Wes Schweitzer, maybe even a little bit better. I love where our offensive line is headed. We may still be looking for more offensive line help, though. We're going to dive into that real soon, but Nick Ackerich brings up a good point about Laramie Tunsil. He said, here's a fun or not so fun, depending on how you look at it, Laramie Tunsil stat. Over the past 3 seasons, Tunsil has given up 10 sacks and 65 total pressures, right? You stand with me. That's 4 fewer sacks and only 8 more pressures than Washington's left tackles have allowed just last season alone. That is insane how much better Laramie Tunsil is, better than anything we've had here, at least since Trent Williams. And you have to go back to Trent Williams and then Chris Samuels before that, like the best left tackles that the Burgundy and Gold have had. And you could even go back to the Hog days. Laramie Tunsil is one of those guys. I firmly believe that, and I still believe he has some great years ahead of him. Now we can take a look at some potential offensive lineman options that are still available in free agency. I'm going to ignore tackle because I'm assuming we're going to stick with Andrew Wiley unless you wanted to cut him and save, a little bit more cap space to maybe make a bigger move later on down the line, but I doubt it. Andrew Wiley, like I've already said in several videos, he's solid at right tackle for you as long as Cliff Kingsbury is your offensive coordinator. Eric Bieniemy did not do a good job of this, but Kingsbury did an excellent job of hiding Wiley's weaknesses within the scheme of the offense. The way that he called plays, the way that he designed plays, avoided putting Wiley in predicaments to where he would more than likely fail or lose his matchups. And Cliff Kingsbury puts Wiley in great situations to win consistently. That's why Wiley is solid as long as Cliff Kingsbury is your offensive coordinator. If Cliff Kingsbury leaves next year, then we can rediscuss this whole Andrew Wiley situation. But 2025 wise, Cliff Kingsbury is your offensive coordinator, and Jaden Daniels is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, first of all, just flat out, but also one of the most mobile quarterbacks in the NFL as well. Andrew Wiley's just fine. And then you can start Nick Allegretti at right guard until Samuel Cosmi's ready, or maybe somehow Samuel Cosmi's ready week 1, even though I'm not assuming that. And then maybe even sometime in the draft, maybe you can find a starting guard, like maybe like a Tate Ratledge in the second round or something like that. Either way, I love where our offensive line is headed this upcoming season. I think it's going to be the best offensive line we've had in a very long time, especially top to bottom, because even back when we had Trent Williams, we had a lot of weaknesses out there. Remember the Sean Laval days and things like that? There's no Sean Laval on this offensive line. Without Laramie Tunsil, we were a top 12 offensive line last year. I'm thinking we're probably top 5 with them. In a top 5 offensive line with Jaden Daniels and better weapons, come on now. So how can you hate on that? So again, my point is, I mean, there are some offensive tackles out there. Maybe if you want to bring in for depth, give some guys some opportunities. You have like a Jedrick Wills, a Cam Robinson, some of these guys that haven't lived up to the draft hype that they had coming out. Tyron Smith, I mean, if he's healthy, if he's able to play, you give him a 1-year heavily incentivized deal, maybe as like a backup tackle, especially now that you lost Cornelius Lucas. Maybe a David Bakhtiari, he's still trying to get back out there after his injury-prone seasons. But when he was healthy, he was easily, arguably, the best tackle in the NFL, at least the best pass protecting tackle. Trent Williams was the best overall tackle. You could argue David Bakhtiari was the best pass protecting tackle just a couple of years ago when he was healthy. So, I mean, maybe you can bring in one of those veterans to replace Cornelius Lucas, but as far as the starting offensive line, we're solid. But don't be surprised if we bring in some veteran tackle to be like what Cornelius Lucas was for us, like a backup swing tackle, where if there's an injury to Laramie Tunsil or Wiley, he can step in. But then again, we have so much versatility. Maybe worst case scenario, Samuel Cosmi's back healthy, say in this scenario, he's already starting at right guard again. If, say, one of the tackles gets hurt, then you move Brandon Coleman to that tackle spot, and then Nick Allegretti moves in at left guard to take over for Brandon Coleman moving to a tackle. Who knows? There's so many ways that we could do this. But right now, I would say that maybe you're looking at another guard until like Samuel Cosmi's 100% ready to go, and maybe you don't want to go into the season with Nick Allegretti as your starting right guard. Again, you could end up drafting a guy like Tate Ratledge, who I feel like has top 15 talent in the draft. He just kind of had a disappointing season last season because I think he was hurt, but that's a guy that if you can snag him in the second round, that's a top 15 talent Pro Bowl caliber player. If not, you have Will Freese, who's 27 years old. Maybe you want to get him. I mean, just last year he had an 84.9 run blocking grade and a 74.9 pass blocking grade. That's not bad. Maybe you can get him for somewhat cheap or something like that. Then you have like Tevin Jenkins, who's 27 years old. Maybe you have Mekhi Becton, if he hasn't been signed yet. Kevin Zeitler, he's up there in age though, 35, but you never know. I mean, there's some options out there if you're taking a look around the free agency area. Again, I'm just throwing some names out there because don't be surprised if we sign one of those guys to come in and be a backup for us, but not a potential starter. Now, moving on, it was reported from a Dolphins reporter, like at Fins Extra, that Miami Dolphins have inquired about Washington Commanders safety Derrick Forest. Of course, they don't have to talk to the Commanders about him. They can talk to him and his agent directly because he's no longer on our roster. This is not somebody we can trade. He's not under contract. He is an unrestricted free agent. He can go wherever he wants to go. And the Commanders are probably okay with Derrick Forest testing the market because they are more than likely not done with the safety position as we are right now as far as free agency and the draft goes. I mean, they still may be looking for a starting safety even after signing Will Harris. And then special teams wise, they're probably perfectly fine with Tyler Owens, who demanded double teams when healthy on special teams coverage, Jeremy Reeves, an all-pro at special teams, Nick Bellore, who was just, Pro Bowl or all-pro last year. Like, we have 3 elite special teams guys. You don't necessarily need Derrick Forest. I would like to bring him back, and I'm pretty sure they would like to bring back Derrick Forest for really cheap. But if the Dolphins want him more and offer him more, then it is what it is. I like Derrick Forest. I still feel like he has the talent to potentially even contribute on defense, but right now he's kind of just held into like a pure special teamer guy, at least for this organization. Who knows if the Dolphins have bigger plans for him, and if they do, he'll probably take that opportunity for more money and a bigger role on a defense. And then next up, just to let you know, shouts out to Catherine Terrell for pointing this out. Former Saints safety Will Harris that signed with the Commanders got a 2-year deal with a $2 million signing bonus. $3.9 million is only guaranteed. That's it? Really? I saw a report of 2 years, $8 million with the potential to get to $10 million. Why is only 3.9 of that guaranteed? With a 2025 base of 1.39 million guaranteed and a base of 2.89 million in 2026 and 4 million APY. 500,000 roster bonus on the 5th day of the 2026 league year as well. Those are all of like the exact contract numbers. So what I'm taking from this as a burgundy and gold fan, the thing that matters most, it sounds like he's only going to be a $1.4 million cap hit in 2025 and then only a $2.9 million cap hit in 2026. I have two big main observations from that, if that's actually true. I'm waiting for Spot Track and Over the Cap to officially update that, but shouts out to the person that reported that. But I'm sorry, I got to go check and, you know, cross-reference and things like that because that's insanely cheap. So my first point, that is extremely cheap. Like, and easily a steal for somebody who had better advanced stats across the board than Jeremy Chinn last year. To potentially get a Jeremy Chinn replacement for way less money is interesting, especially for that level of cheap. Even if he doesn't start, that money is so minimal, you're not worried about it at all. You don't even notice it off the cap space. And then two, if they're actually paying him that little in guaranteed money, then even they don't view him as a starter. So to me, this shows, just based off of the way that this contract is set up, that they don't necessarily see him as a starter, and they're probably still looking for a starting safety to go opposite of Quan Martin in either free agency or the draft. So don't be surprised if we're still targeting another safety in free agency, maybe like a Justin Simmons. My last video broke down why Justin Simmons may be a good idea for us with his relationship from Adam Peters going all the way back when Adam Peters was director of college scouting and pro personnel and things like that for the Broncos when they drafted Justin Simmons. And also the fact that Justin Simmons just recently, as of like yesterday or a couple of days ago, was on a podcast saying that the Eagles, that he likes them as a free agency landing spot, and then named the Commanders as second. So it's probably between the Eagles and the Commanders who's going to end up with Justin Simmons if it's up to him. Maybe it comes down to money. We'll see. And then also, a shouts out to @Kami's Mommies because he brings up a good point, funny name too, but he said, I think AP's strategy is just to find value at certain positions that he probably believes that aren't that important. Safety is clearly one of them. So if we're not looking for another starting safety, if we're satisfied with Will Harris being our starting safety opposite of Quan Martin, that will show us that maybe Adam Peters is like, well, we're going to spend big on edge rusher, on left tackle, maybe on receivers, quarterback, of course, when Jaden Daniels' contract comes up, but maybe safety is one of those positions that we can kind of save a little bit of money on, because as long as the other 9-10 guys around him are great, we'll be fine. You just got to fit into the system. You don't have to be an all-star player. We'll see, though, if that's how they really feel. And then speaking of safeties, man, Javon Holland, man, that boy straight up lied. Just a few days, like last month, sometime in February, he gave an exact list. It's a whole video of it. You can see it on the internet for yourself. Through Twitter, Fins Extra, actually, the people that reported the Derrick Forest thing actually have the tweet themselves of Javon Holland. It's a video of him listing what he's looking for in a free agency landing spot. He said detailed and experienced coaching, honest culture, man-leading head coach, a team that wants to win, and leaders that want to lead and set examples by actions, not by their word. Don't all of those sound like Commanders? Well, how did that man end up signing with the New York Giants? So I guess money talks. Even though he signed for less than what I expected him to get, I would have paid him that easily what the Giants gave him. But maybe the Commanders aren't as high on the Javon Holland as I am, or maybe they're just being really frugal with their cap space to keep enough cap space to maybe potentially make a bigger move. Maybe Trey Hendrickson. And just a reminder and an update, just back on March 7th, it was reported that the Bengals are seeking a late second-round pick or early third-round pick for defensive end Trey Hendrickson that came from Jonathan Jones. And just to let you know, remember, like we talked about earlier, we do have a late second-round pick, 61st overall, that may do it. I think what the holdup is, though, is that the Bengals are not only demanding that you give them a late second round pick, but then Trey Hendrickson on the other end of it is like, okay, after you trade for me, you're gonna have to probably give me more money than what Mason Crosby just got per year, which is $35.5 million. I mean, if we can give up that 61st overall pick and pay him $30 million a year, I would do that trade immediately. But once we start to get in the $36 million per year territory, especially at his age, and he's a guy that doesn't necessarily stop the run very well, that's when you kind of lose me. And so then 2 days later, on March 10th, it was reported that many teams are extremely interested in the Bengals star defensive end and the 2024 sack leader, Trey Hendrickson, but their current asking price is unreasonable. So basically teams are calling the Bengals asking for too much, and I'm assuming what people consider the asking price being too much is based on the fact that, again, you're gonna have to pay Trey Hendrickson so much money that, hey, I know you're asking for us late second, but it's got to be lower than that if we're gonna have to pay that guy that much money, which is the reason you're in this ugly situation. The Bengals want to keep Trey Hendrickson. They're just allowing him to seek a trade because they're like, we can't pay you all that money that you're asking for. We still got to pay T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and we are so stupid that we waited until all of these other receivers and great and edge rushers went and got new contracts and big money. Now we got to pay our guys more than if we would have just given them what they wanted last year this time. Instead of franchise tagging T. Higgins for a second time this offseason, instead of stalling with Jamar Chase this long, the Bengals could have had all of these guys paid long term if they would have just handled this last year, but they wanted to play around. They wanted to keep negotiating and twiddling their thumbs, and now they're in a situation where Trey Hendrickson is more than likely going to leave. I'm not sure if it's going to be the Commanders, but I think at some point the Bengals are going to have to lower their asking price. The problem is, even if they lower their asking price, I mean, we don't have a third round pick. So it would go from 61st overall, and I guess everybody in the NFL is colluding together to be like, all right, if nobody gives them a second round pick or higher, then I won't. Let's get them to bring it down. Maybe all the other 31 teams are talking to each other, whispering like, hey, I won't give up a second round pick if you don't. Let's try to get that pick down a little bit. We don't have a third round pick, though. Again, like I told y'all earlier, we only have the 128th overall pick in the 4th round from the Texans. And, you know, I highly doubt we can get Trey Hendrickson for that unless that asking price plummets based on from what we're hearing right now. Also, speaking of edge rushers, the Packers are apparently very interested in bringing in Dante Fowler, and there's mutual interest between the two sides to get a deal done. All right, so the Packers take Dante Fowler from us, and then we trade for Trey Hendrickson from the Bengals, maybe? You know, I'm kind of just having fun, though. This is all la-la land, hypothetical stuff that doesn't really have any true merit behind it. But, you know, we can have fun. Because, again, I think there is a real reason that we're being so frugal with our cap space. I mean, you can keep all of this money that you want, but it's not like it necessarily transfers to the next season that much. I mean, of course, you don't want to sign guys to big contracts to the point that they're eating up a bunch of 2026 cap space. So when we're in this situation next year, you know, we can have more cap space available and stuff like that. But I truly believe we are holding on to as much cap space as we have right now, which is still like top 10 in the NFL for a reason. So I don't know. Maybe we're still looking at big moves. I keep bringing up the name Trey Hendrickson, but maybe it's somebody else. Laramie Tunsil came out of absolutely nowhere. Nobody predicted that. Maybe there's something else like that in the works for an elite player at a different position. We'll see. And then also updating another contract. Apparently, John Bates' deal is 3 years, $21 million, with $11.52 million guaranteed, which makes him a little less than $3 million per year, probably against the cap. Very, very cheap for a tight end that apparently had a market out there. And then lastly, before we get up out of here, nothing to do with the Commanders. I just thought it was hilarious that you have Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson competing for the starting quarterback job for the Indianapolis Colts. Well, here's a stat for you. The lowest passer rating in the NFL over the past 2 seasons, literally those 2 quarterbacks, Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. Shouts out to Rio Robinson because he quote tweeted it and said, this is a generational A-word quarterback competition. I mean, this is generationally trash. I don't think I've ever noticed a quarterback competition this terrible. It is crazy because both of those guys have a lot of natural talent, but quarterback just hasn't worked out. Now, Daniel Jones has been allotted a lot of opportunities. Anthony Richardson, his whole thing was he shouldn't have left the draft that early, and especially after he got drafted, he should have sat. He should have never have started that early and been exposed to starting quarterback environment and antics, you know, as early as he did, especially immediately as like a rookie and things like that. But Daniel Jones, there's really no excuse for you. But either way, it's crazy how talented these guys are. Like if they were to hold like a quarterback combine, these two would probably be like really big standouts, especially Anthony Richardson. But that doesn't automatically translate to good quarterback play. And it's just hilarious that the Colts now have the 2 lowest passer rating NFL quarterbacks over the past 2 years, both competing for a starting quarterback job. Not only just on the roster in general, but one of these guys is going to win the starting quarterback job. And I'm pretty sure all of these signings that the Colts are making right now with getting all of these good players to make their team better, it's not going to matter when Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson is your quarterback, because you're not going anywhere with that. There is definitely a severe ceiling with those guys being your quarterback right now. Unless Anthony Richardson somehow gets an epiphany and becomes better, I think Daniel Jones is pretty much cooked. I think he's just at this point, a career backup quarterback. I'm just going to assume Anthony Richardson maybe wins that job just off of the fact that there is maybe some unknowns with them, maybe some ceiling. But either way, I'm only bringing this up just again, like I said with the Falcons a few videos ago. When in doubt, if you're feeling bad as a Commanders fan, it could always be worse. You could be a Colts fan. But yeah, man, that's it of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in the video. Please still farm that like button, still farm the subscription button, still farm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Just to let you know, as promised, the answer to the trivia question is Jay Schroeder. 4,109 yards in 1986. If you knew that one before I told you the answer and you didn't have to look it up, Google it or whatever throughout the video, you know ball. You know burgundy and gold ball. You're a true Redskins fan, man. Shouts out to you. And of course, man, make sure you leave a like on the way out. And of course, also, most importantly, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Derrick Forest potentially going to the Dolphins. Are you willing to let him leave? Dante Fowler potentially going to the Packers. How do you feel about that? The Commanders really wanted Ronnie Stanley. How you feel about our official draft picks and maybe the fact that we could get a 6th round compensatory pick in the 2026 draft, not this upcoming one, but that draft. Also, how do you feel about Will Harris and John Bates' contracts probably hitting cap space way less hard than we expected, like for way cheaper? We got those guys for minimal cap hits. I think that's fantastic. Let me know how you feel about the chances of us potentially trading for Trey Hendrickson. Let me know how you feel about everything. Really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna try my best to read and reply to as many comments as possible, but as you can see, I'm busy pumping out videos. I got a lot going on even outside of YouTube as well. That's why these videos are coming out at random times like this. Either way, I really appreciate y'all for staying patient with me. Leave a like on the way out. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.